Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming on the program. Great talking to you.
Always great to be here.
And with Eric Holder set to testify before the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday, the release of these wiretaps signed by Lanny Breuer sure to provide some interesting questions for the Attorney General later this week.
Right, signed by Deputy Attorney General Lanny Breuer on behalf of the Attorney General. Keep in mind that Eric Holder and Lanny Breuer have, to this point, never admitted knowing any of the details about Fast and Furious. And I know that a lot of your listeners are law enforcement, so they would know this, but we'll give people a little refresher. A wiretap is the last line of defense that law enforcement has in their toolbox because it is so invasive. So in order for a wiretap application to be approved, not to mention 6 of them, they would have to submit extremely detailed information about a case to get approval, and in this case, they did. And what was interesting about this letter, I think ISA gave us a little bit of a preview as to what's coming maybe on Thursday, but also down the road, because he said that the new information contained in the wiretap application places us in a position to begin the process of assigning accountability among senior department officials. And so it's go time. We're getting serious here.
Absolutely right. Now, again, Representative Issa today talked about the false statements by Justice Department officials here. I mean, could we be looking at the possibility of Lanny Breuer having committed perjury, or senior department officials committing perjury when they testified before Congress?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, you go back, and there's so many things we could go through that we won't have time for now, but you go back into Lanny Breuer's role alone. And he was the guy who approved multiple drafts of that letter that was signed by actually Ronald Weiss, who was now the dean at a law school. Lanny Breuer signed this letter that was sent to Congress in February 2011 that was so full of false statements, and I call lies, even though Eric Holder would say they were inaccuracies and not lies, that it had to be withdrawn from the record. And, Eric Holder's own testimony conflicts with what he's said multiple times under oath in front of Congress. Lanny Breuer's testimony now conflicts with these documents that we've seen. And so I think we're going to see some perjury charges at minimum, not to mention obstruction of justice charges probably coming down the pike.
Wow. Very, very interesting. So, Katie, what do you think this does for the timeline in terms of the contempt of Congress charges against Eric Holder?
Well, I think that was kind of what we saw with this little preview here. I think that holding these top Justice Department officials accountable, and ISA calling for Eric Holder to do that with his own department, I don't think that leaves Eric Holder out of the mix. I think this means that, look, they're sick of sitting around and waiting. It's time for Eric Holder, along with his top officials, to come clean on this. And, like we've talked about before, Eric Holder and this administration in general have put themselves in a very tough spot, because if they come out and comply with the subpoena to avoid contempt charges, he's going to submit documentation that I guarantee you would conflict with his testimony, because he's been having to keep track of not only his lies, but the lies of his department and the lies of other departments as well. But if he doesn't comply with the subpoena and we move forward with contempt charges, which it looks like we're going to do, he's in a very bad spot politically, especially with President Obama running for re-election. That would be a black eye on the administration just before we hit the summer. And so it's going to get ugly, but I think that we're going to move forward with charges, which is great. And like you said, Thursday will be quite interesting. I will be there, and I'm looking forward to Eric Holder complaining that he's testifying for the 8th time about Fast and Furious, even though he hasn't answered any of our questions so far.
Well, yeah, and I don't think the groups allied with President Obama, who wrote a letter to Speaker Boehner complaining about this rush to judgment, I don't think that they're going to have anything new to say about these revelations. But it is interesting, those who kept saying, "Oh, this is a partisan witch hunt." There's, it's just all political. Look, if we have senior justice level officials or senior level justice officials who were saying one thing to Congress when their wiretap applications that they approved say something else. Look, we got to get to the bottom of this. We deserve answers, and frankly, Brian Terry's family deserves answers.
Well, we go into why are they continuing this stonewalling, right? Why? And the bottom line is it's because they had a sinister agenda behind this, something that got people killed, and they're not willing to admit it. And one thing that I thought was interesting today, as soon as Congressman Issa sent that letter to Holder, of course, the Representative Cummings on the Oversight Committee, who's on the Democratic side in charge of the Democrats and the minority Oversight Democrats, he sent a letter to Congressman Issa that was redacted. I mean, parts of it are redacted, and I'm sure the form that Issa saw wasn't redacted, but the form that the press and the public got was. So now the minority on the Oversight Committee is in full engagement and cover-up mode for the Justice Department, all the way into using redacted material and sending letters back and forth. That's the level that we've gotten to this. That's how desperate they are.
Unbelievable. Listen, Katie, thank you again for coming on the program, and maybe we can talk to you again Thursday night.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Katie Pavlich from townhall.com joining us here on NRAnews.com.